jumps in. So I hope my players were watching that as like and seeing that and understanding why we harp on the little details so much, because those are the difference makers.
Brad, you you talked about how Florida pressured in the zone and Edmonton couldn't break out. They couldn't get possession and make short passes and get out very quickly. And I wonder if you could refer to that a little bit. That you were quite you wondered what the heck went on there because they couldn't cope with Florida's forecheck and sustained possession.
No, their forecheck was phenomenal, and even when Edmonton would get the puck, they would close off the lanes, then they would turn pucks over, and I really questioned. They would turn it over. Their second guy was in there quicker than the Edmonton second guy, and then the puck went almost no looks. They put it up to the defenseman quite often, and then they crash the net, throw pucks in, and you kind of watch the Edmonton forwards and the wingers kind of, they're crashing down to the front of the net, but they don't really have the slot guy. The puck goes up top, and they're not really getting up top to block shots. And if Florida knew if they didn't have a play, they just put it back down behind the net, they're going to win that battle and wear Edmonton down. But they seemed to really get lost in the D zone coverage on the forechecks. But to execute two or three quick plays, they weren't able to do that to get out of the zone with any kind of ease. And then by the time they do, shifts over, so they got to change, so that they have no energy left to go in the offense.
Yeah. And the other thing, we're going to bring Dave into the call here. Dave, initially, before the last game, we were more concerned about the series and how they would handle McDavid. Well, they certainly did. I'm not sure how to describe what they did, but that was a pretty good example of not letting them get through the neutral zone with control and regain possession in the offensive zone. So, Dave, if you'd go ahead, share some of your thoughts on the series and things you thought went on and just might do differently if you wore your coach's hat. Your speaker, Dave, please. Got to click your speaker on. You might have to get Linda to help you there. Just click on audio, I guess.
Click on microphone on the bottom. Yeah, audio. It's the far left icon on the screen.
Okay, while we're waiting for Dave to figure it out, Peter, when you got on the call, I wish I had clicked record then, but do you remember at the beginning of the call, you were just starting to talk about your summation of the series, and you sent out you took a Instagram link of a quote by Matthew Tkachuk, and I thought, wow, to receive that
I got that. I can
and
if you want, read it.
can you read it, Peter, to the audience while Linda and Dave are getting his volume working? Go ahead, Peter.
Sure. Heart beats team. When things were getting hard for them, they looked to one guy. But we do it collectively. And that's why we're lifting the Stanley Cup right now, because we're a team, not a bunch of individuals.
Now, you were a little unclear at the beginning of that. That's a quote by Matthew Tkachuk, and I'm going to get you to repeat it again because in my mind, that's summarized why they were successful and the other team wasn't. Go ahead again, Peter.
Sure. Heart meets talent. Our team was a team. When things were getting hard for them, they looked to one guy. But our team, we do it collectively. And that's why we're lifting the Stanley Cup right now, because we're a team and not a bunch of individuals.
Brad, with your team, I think it's fair to say, comparatively speaking, you had a team of all-stars, like at the junior A level. And having to coach more talented players, and it looked like the Oilers had more upper end talent, but they didn't come up with the team performance that you need to win.
Just asking a question.
So, could you just comment on Brad? And we'll check to see if Dave is on the voice yet. Dave, are you there yet?
Yeah, Wally, I think we got it now. Are we okay?
Okay, Brad, we'll go with Dave, and then at some
Yeah, no, of course.
we'll get back to talking about coaching at any other level and what you learned from this series that might apply, because it's basically motivating players to play the right way. Dave, go ahead.
Thank you, Wally. Sorry about the technical problem there. Brad, first of all, congratulations on the Centennial Cup. That's a big accomplishment, and I know you more as a player than a coach, so keep going. You're young. You've got lots of time ahead of you.
Thanks, Dave.
You're welcome. Wally, I'll comment a bit on this thing. First of all, I should say that my experience with Phoenix, we got to the conference final. We beat Chicago, we beat Nashville, and then we lost to LA in the conference final. They won the Stanley Cup. So I do have some background with, as Cal mentioned, the marathon that playoff hockey is. And so to me, one of the most important things about every successful team in the playoffs is, are you adaptable? Sometimes the most adaptable teams are the ones that win. And, I thought that there was a pretty good job by Florida getting close to McDavid more than other teams did. More teams played off, laid back, gave him separation, gave him a chance to generate speed, a lot of speed. And he tore teams like LA, Dallas, those kind of teams apart with his speed. And when he gets an entry too, he makes such great passes. He's not just a great, a guy at generating scoring chances. His passes are bloody amazing. So, I thought Florida got close to him, at times picked him up, forced him to give it up early. If he did get it, there was somebody either on his heels or in front of him very quickly to most of the time take away his acceleration space. And they made entries much more difficult for him. So, they were the only team I saw in the playoffs that seemed to want to try to challenge him. Most teams, and he's a great player. I mean, he's the best player ever to play the game. He's the fastest player ever to play the game. And they chose to confront him more than other teams did. And I think that, plus just hard work, good checking efforts, it seemed to frustrate McDavid. It really did frustrate Draisaitl a lot. And that's why they were successful. I think the one thing I would say, Wally, is teams have to be adaptable in the playoffs because everything changes. You're playing a team now possibly 7 times. And so the expectations grow as you go along in the series. And so, you get injuries, you get expectations, you get all kinds of things that happen. So, every player has to have their game serve the team. When your best players do that, I think that really helps everybody else get in line and have to do it. So that's a very important thing. I think the other thing I would say is in the playoffs, especially in the playoffs, there's no question in a series, both teams are going to get fatigued. It happens. It's how you play after that point, how smart you play after that point. Have you adapted? And are you going to play a game that makes sense to last possibly 3 games of a 7-game series? And Florida, they really did that. They really, I think, are a well-coached team. I like their idea that everybody plays hard and competes. And I think that's what makes a difference. And I think the other thing that's really important is I don't know, my experience, and you guys have all coached, so you're probably thinking the same thing. Players can deal with more physical stamina issues than they can mental stamina issues. Like the mental stamina required in a playoff series is huge, and you get worn down, and it's really a grind. And so the teams with the most mental strength usually are the ones that can come out on top and be successful. So every team has mental and physical fatigue. Physical fatigue is a problem, but mental fatigue is a greater problem. And I think that was a factor in the series. You have to kind of win in the right way or for the right reasons, And if I watch Florida's game, and for the most, I mean, they make mistakes, but for the most part, they make smart, easy decisions, and they make really tough choices. And by that, I simply mean your decisions is your mental part of your game. That's the part of the game that, what you do with the puck, how much speed can you enter into a checking situation, things like that. Those are decisions, and they make smart decisions most of the time, but they make tough choices a lot of the time. Blocking shots, hustling hard all the time, really good back pressure, blocking shots. I mean, they put it on the line every game, probably more than the Oilers did, and that made a difference. I think one thing that Brad talked about, I thought was a good point. Florida lives and dies with their forecheck, and the D are pinching right down to the icing line many times. And it's an automatic there that the D gets the green light. The forward's got to be a forward's got to be in a position to reload and back up and give him the chance to get down there and stay down deep and make things happen. And they do a really good job on their forecheck. A lot of people rate forechecking based upon the turnovers you create, and they do create turnovers. But what they did, they forced the Oilers a lot to have to make 3 or 4 passes or chips to get it out. So what happens is you got to hold it a little longer in your D zone coverage because you're not sure you're getting it out. Finally, you make 3 or 4 passes and get it out. You don't have a lot of speed. Very often, you only have 2-man rushes and sometimes just a 1-man rush. And so it makes defending the middle zone much, much more easy. So when you evaluate forechecking, you have to evaluate sometimes how many passes you force the other team to make, because the more passes you force them to make, the slower usually their rush game is. And that's what they did so well. And that's why Oilers just couldn't handle it. Their defensemen just had a great deal of time, problems with forechecking. Not a lot of time, but they didn't deal with it that well.
Dave, before you go on,
Yeah.
related to that mental resiliency and mental alertness, and Tarasov had the quote, and you coach against him, and he said, more important than speed of foot and speed of hand is speed of mind.
Yeah.
The forecheck was great. I thought their ability to win free pucks, maintain ozone possession, putting it to spaces, winning races and battles, they had far better decision making when they got the puck in the ozone.
Yeah.
I thought that was mentally, they were more alert, on their toes, sharper, getting to pucks first to frustrate them in their zone. So I just wanted to share that because it looked like Edmonton wasn't up to speed mentally to process the game and intuitively respond to situations.
Well, yeah, I mentioned, mental fatigue, and I think to me, they showed a lot more mental fatigue than did Florida. Florida, in fact, when they got determined in games 5 and 6, you could see a real difference in the two teams because, people talk a lot about momentum, and it's a word that some people aren't sure really what it means. Momentum means you play with more initiative. That's all it is. Your team is playing with more initiative, and that is momentum. And without a doubt, in games 5 and 6, Florida played with a lot of initiative all the time in all situations. They check in their zone that way. They're not a team that lays off very much and plays soft. They get to people quick, and it's just their 5-on-5 coverage is like their penalty killing. It's get quick pressure and really get on people early. And so I think their mental discipline, their mental strength as a team was greater than Edmonton, and that's where I saw the difference. Although everybody would agree here, probably very difficult to win without top level goalkeeping, and I think that really was a factor too. That's what shifted initiative sometimes was the goaltending.
Good point, Dave, because the momentum of scoring a goal might have uplifted them.
Yeah.
Getting the first goal might have uplifted them, but regardless, Florida seemed to be able to respond to situations, adversity like that during the game.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Dave, because I was sorry to interrupt you there. I just wanted to get that point in because, there's two sides of the game. There's the X and O side, and then there's the emotional side, which is the mind game, the controlling your own mind, being at the top of your game, as Cal would use the phrase, being in an ideal performance state. And
yeah, I think Wally and all the guys have coached here, so they know your teams perform better when they feel good about themselves. And I think Florida's coaching staff, I think, must do a very good job. There must be a great environment in that dressing room because, they collectively, it looked like after game 4, they might be, it might be slipping away. And, they just dug in, and that's what they can do. And so that's a real credit to the mental aspect of their game. It really shows itself, and they have a lot of depth in that area. Like I think the Oilers have got some tough-minded guys. Florida's got a lot more. It would appear to me watching on television, they have a lot more guys prepared to go longer, and stay in the hunt and stay in the fight a little longer. And so, yeah, really a great series. Difficult for Edmonton because they have got a pretty talented group, but I just saw a lot of holes in their game. The Oilers, that I really questioned. How many times can you get beat one-on-one on the rush? Like usually, you can watch 25 NHL games and rarely see a guy get beat one-on-one on a rush. Well, in this series, actually both teams gave up too many, but Edmonton, their defensemen gave up a lot of rush situations one-on-one where they didn't get it done, and all of a sudden, not was it a scoring chance, it was a goal. So, it comes down to the little things we all preach and talk about. Going back to my early days with the national team, Father Bauer always said one-on-one. You got to be good one-on-one. When you're good one-on-one, defense takes care of itself. And of course, with layers of coverage behind the one-on-one, obviously, you're much stronger. So I'll let somebody else talk, Wally. I don't want to talk too much here.
Well, Dave, I'm glad you brought that up in terms of one-on-ones because having played against the Soviets and then coming to work with you voluntarily to work on tactical defensive skills, it was a pretty appropriate evolution for me as a young ex-player getting into coaching. Brad, your team was an offensive team, and I talked to one of your skills coaches who said, gee, we got to be better in the defensive zone. And I actually said to him, no, it's too late to suddenly focus on D-zone cover. You're going to win game 7-5 instead of 2-1. And I left it at that. And Dave, the game today is about offensive execution and entertainment. And back in our day, we had to teach defensive tactical skating and specific tactical skills to the defense. And we could play the Russians 5-on-5. Now, by Russians, I mean Soviets, which includes all of the former countries that are now that were under the Soviet umbrella. How were comparatively speaking, Dave, how was the skill level of those players compared to the skill level of players today? You've coached in Russia and you coached against the Soviets before that era.
Well, I think the Russians just have a lot of real good players. There's lots of real good NHL potential players still playing in Russia that may not come over. But so I think if you're going to be good one-on-one, it's the details that start it. So Wally used to do drills with our defensemen that I thought were really good for D zone coverage down low. You talked about square up, toe cap square, a little shade with your shoulders. Opposite shoulder on opposite shoulder, that kind of thing. You talked about using the snowplow, like jump to check, but the last few strides, if you snowplow a little bit with one skate, all of a sudden you control your speed and you stay squared up. You don't do a 2-foot stop that puts you weak to one side. So, little details like that. I think in the game now, we have a lot of skill coaches that are really working on offensive skill. I don't know if we have very many coaches working on the details of defensive skill, but there's a lot of our skill in our game has gone right through the roof. The defensive part of our game has not improved that much, and probably that's really good because offense is what everybody wants to watch, and the offensive part of our game now does not take a back seat to the Russians, the Czechs, anybody. We're very dangerous. We use our tools well. We understand the game. It's not anymore just pounding physically European teams to win. We tactically and skill wise outplay them most of the time. So, it's very interesting that for years and years we've talked about improving the offense, and we can't forget the defensive side of the game.
Brad, we had you on as a guest a couple of weeks ago, and we talked a little bit about defensive tactical skating. And I told the story of watching Marty Jelena and the Flames staff back in the day doing a lightning drill where they stopped on their favorite side with a 2-foot stop and a crossover. And I shook at that because to me it's creating a bad habit. And I was really pleased that you brought it up and you dealt with that concept of stops and starts and facing the puck. Can you relate your story with what you did with your team to respect the importance of tactical skating without the puck?
Yeah, we talked about like we would do, and not even a bag skate. We would call it a skate for purpose. But guys on both blue lines, one side has to go to center, stop facing the coach, and then go back to blue line, stop facing the coach, red line, blue line. And they did it twice. And if anybody did a crossover, they had to go again before the other side because they all want to, they didn't touch the line, but they all want to do the lazy kind of crossover and just getting them into that. It's the mindset of opening up the hips and taking that stride. Then the other side would go and we're not taught that. Everyone wants to do the crossover and kind of slide. And in the D zone, that extra, whatever it is, quarter second can make a difference. And I know we also talked about like the players we get now at a junior level and the defending, like it takes us half a year to get a defenseman to go in the corner with a stick on the ice and not up in the sky. When they hit, they want to have their stick up in the sky, not on the puck. Or the cross-checking for me is a big one. They go in with the sticks out and a player can spin on their weak side and they're gone. And we really have to, you said, nobody teaches good sticks in defending, and it's really lacking as we get players, even at a junior level.
Brad, your comments are terrific. I go back to the 80s when we were playing the Russians and they were so much better. We did a lot of our checking stuff with the national team, and Wally can confer this. We did a lot of checking with no stick. We played the rush with no stick, one-on-one D zone coverage down low, 2-on-2, 3-on-3 with no sticks for defenders. And then we would give them eventually the stick turned over, which is a little better, but still not there. So it's those little things that teach guys tactically how to play, how to shade a little bit, how to steer a little bit. They learn to really appreciate the stick, Brad, and you're talking about that. So I've always found it's not that difficult. We weren't that smart. We just didn't give them a stick, made them, learn to check with angling, eyes up, controlling your speed was really critical then. And so those little things just seem to work. And I think a lot of times coaches don't spend enough time on some of those things, Brad.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, for the audience out there, the generation of coaches that are actively coaching today, all teams, elite teams, have skills coaches, and they're offensive skills coaches. It's about the toe drag. It's about individual puck control and deception and speed. Offensive skating is proactive. You want to create time and space with deception, changing of direction, fakes, deeks, and that's what they're taught. Dave, if we hadn't played the Soviets back in our era, we would not know the difference. And
Yes.
I think, to me, watching that series, that was a fundamental difference. For some reason, whether Florida worked on it or not, they never got beat one-on-one in the low zone. They pressured early. Their man-on was there sooner. They got the puck sooner. Maybe they didn't have to worry about the tactical skating because they were there and they were playing the game the right way. But we had to practice it deliberately, progressively, in one-on-one drills, isolated individual repetition, progressions. And I know the players back in the day really appreciated it because they got confidence when they played against superior players. So I just think it's so critical before that we leave this information out there for people to consider. And Brad, your concept of stopping both ways and not crossing over, that's it. It's as simple as that. Controlled skating when you don't have the puck is critical. Doesn't mean you sit back. It means you pressure or contain relative to the situation in hand. And that requires breaking down your speed and using your stick well. And that was lacking. And everybody says, oh no, we work on it. We work on it. And I'm not sure because I've seen too many elite teams, NHL teams, not handle one-on-one situations that well. And this was a perfect example. Dave, you're in the heat of the competition at the Stanley Cup. You're not going to work on defensive tactical skating during the Stanley Cup playoffs.
It's too late. Yep.
Now, if you have a team at the beginning of the year, today, I don't even know if you could do it today with players today because it's sort of like, oh, it's not in their mindset to think that's valuable. So if you're coaching today, Dave, what would you do differently than when you coached back in your era?
Oh, well, probably a lot of things actually, but I think one of the important things is, and again, repeating myself, we've all coached in this group of people now on the Zoom call. You got to do these things early in the season. You got to put the details of offensive and defensive play. You got to teach them and do it early because it's interesting. There's an old expression, Wally. Players, will repeat what they are rewarded for, but also too they'll repeat what you tolerate. So if you tolerate bad technique starting from the season on, it's not going to be correctable at all, probably in the course of that season. You've got to make sure that you teach those things early and set the stage that you're a guy that looks at details and those kind of things. But it's really interesting too. I'm off the topic a little bit here. I had a chance when I was with Phoenix to coach Eddie Jovanovski, who you might remember, guys, big, burly, defenseman. And then there's a guy playing now for Florida, Ekblad. And both of them, it's interesting. And I love this part of our game. Both of them seem to play by the seat of their pants. However, they're strangely effective. And that's one of the beauties of our game, Wall, is we do teach technique. You watch Forsling check and guys like that. I mean, geez, the angling, the steering, the use of the stick, it's amazing, and they're really effective. But you watch Jovanovski and when he played, and now Ekblad, and they throw a lot of technique out the window. The difficulty with that is, though, if you don't have great technique, and like Ekblad, you jump the check with lots of speed, you do take more penalties, and that's just the way it is. So, yeah, that's one of the fun things about coaching is some players seem to be able to do it without the technique. But for sure, when I watch the Scandinavian defensemen throughout the playoffs, I love watching their checking technique because they really understand the defensive checking skills very well. The Swedes are really good. The Finns are really good and probably better than in most cases than the Russians are in terms of that part of the game. So very interesting. And coaching is an amazing profession, Wally, because sometimes you don't have all the answers.
Well, I think this group is concerned about the game at all levels. And it starts before the Stanley Cup playoffs. I mean,
yeah,
the fundamentals of skating and tactical skating is a term. I don't know whether it's the only term that I've come up with, but it's one thing to skate. Now, the tactical is situational skating in one-on-one situations. And that requires a little bit of analysis and a little bit of focus. And it's not fun, but it is important. And one of the lines that we use as a group of Sharks is the art of coaching is about doing the right stuff, the right amount at the right time.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what we're talking about. Like, teach kids to stop and start without crossing over. Stop and T-start, I call it. Teach them snowplows. Oh, they think that's fundamental skating and they can do it. They can already stop and crossover start. Like that's a valuable skill in the game. And I think that's a bit of an error or a mistake in the teaching of the game because you play without the puck more than you have it. And I'm not saying Edmonton can change that overnight or change it over a season. I'm just saying minor hockey coaches have to appreciate the playing without the puck. And Tom Malloy has joined us. And Tom, you and Johanny Walson came up with just breaking down the game into 4 areas. And I wonder if you could describe that now, because I think the focus on the game right now is offense. And boy, if we can't win, we're going to trade players and find players who can create more offense or get a better goalie to stop pucks to keep us in the game. But I think we're missing out on the fundamentals of playing without the puck to get the puck back. And Dave, I know in Japan, we created that little circular diagram on transition, being the game within a game, where you create the turnover and there is a free puck and there's that moment in time where somebody's going to react faster. And I think the Panthers did that. Tom, can you just simplify those 4 teaching points? Because they're so fundamental and sensible, but they make you think of both sides of the puck.
Well, the Finns and the Swedes both conceptualize a game saying you're either on offense or defense, where the puck is loose. And when you're on offense, the 2 playing roles, player with the puck, and then the other players are supporting the puck. And then the defensive roles are the player checking the puck carrier and the players, covering away from the puck, either zone or man to man. And when a coach is organizing his training his team, he's got to go through all of those things. And of course, a fundamental thing to everything at the start, like we have our ABCs of hockey, and the A is individual skills like skating, stick handling, shooting. But you have to go through, like you're talking about, the skating skills. And I don't think defensive skating skills are stressed very much. And, when I was in Stockholm last month, this one guy, Cronin, I think he just got fired. He was showing defensive skating, and Howie Draper, when we saw him with the U18 Canadian women there, they were really working on it. So, they're kind of skills that I think the Panthers really do well. But like you say, everybody worries about winning. And Toronto gave the Panthers the best fight of all, and they got their main goalie hurt right away. And now they're breaking their whole team down and getting rid of players like Marner and this sort of thing. And so the score is kind of what everybody focuses on.
Brad, I got a question for you. You mentioned earlier you hope the players watch the series. What did you want them to see and learn?
I think it's the details we talk about. And anytime they see it at an NHL level, it just reiterates for them like, hey, it makes sense. And it's like the face-offs and holding up or boxing out or winning those battles or for instance the second goal last game, like multiple things. Bouchard turns it over at the blue line, in the last minute of a period. But we talked to our guys about, kick it out a little bit earlier. It doesn't have to be perfect. There's an opportunity to kick it out early, and then you back check and you over. It's almost like you don't trust identifying off the rush. I think McDavid duplicates coverage, and which leaves Kachuk walking down the middle, which isn't a scoring chance, but they've got a guy in front of the net. So lots of little things that we talk about that they compound the mistakes, don't compound one mistake by others, and hopefully they see those type of things. And so I'd like them to maybe see some of the adjustments that we might make in situations like that, or in a series like that where we talked about Florida's forecheck, and their defense also pinched all the time and turned a lot of pucks over. But I don't think Edmonton adjusted their wingers. We maybe would push our wingers right up to the blue line or bypass that and start getting in foot races, challenging their F3 to see if he's actually going to cover for defense. And I don't think Edmonton adjusted at all, and that's something we would do. And in our league where it's a little more run and gun, and we can try to take advantage and know when to bypass those type of situations, but didn't see much adjustment. And if I talked to any of the players, hopefully maybe they picked up on some of that stuff. I think the smarter ones would see some of that.
You think that Florida or Edmonton was over back checking? I saw Florida taking the middle all the time while Edmonton guys, and I remember Dave and Wally coaching that with the national team. Dave would stand near the blue line and they go wide, and then he'd give up the blue line, and the players would, skate in front of him and take the middle. So take what they give you.
I don't think there's a lot of trust in each other for the Oilers. I don't think they trusted the goalie. I don't think they trusted the defense. So then you're going to probably try to do a little bit more than you should, and that's the consequence of it.
Hal, have you got any thoughts, whether you've watched the series at all or not, and listen to this conversation, which I think it's with Dave and Brad on. I think it's really insightful at a very high level of how fast the game is, and fundamental mistakes are occurring at the highest level. It's much faster. There's less time and space. So, Hal, any thoughts? And maybe introduce yourself for the audience, if you wouldn't mind.
Hi, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Hi, Hal Turse. I coach in Minnesota. At virtually all levels. And I really enjoy listening to you guys. I've had a number of teams in my career that have fallen short at national tournaments or something like that. I've seen here in Minnesota a number of teams that looked like Edmonton, where it's one or two players everybody's relying on, and you never get there, for sure. And I mean, we had a Bantam team that went to the national championships, and our top player, just didn't get anything done. But he eventually ended up playing 14 years in the National Hockey League. So he learned as he got older. But teams like Florida will win because they're going to attract high-end talent that want to play in that culture. And teams that are perennially don't win, it's an organizational issue more than an execution issue, in my opinion. And teams that struggle are going to have a hard time bringing free agents in. They're going to have a hard time putting together the right culture. I know another team from Canada that had some real culture issues in the locker room. Our local team in Minnesota used to have some real culture issues in the locker room. And it's pretty hard to play for each other when you don't even like each other. So kudos to the Florida organization for putting the right group of guys in the locker room. I think that really is important. As I think I said on my text last night, the first Olympic women's coach for USA, which was winning all the time, was asked, what's your key to success? And this is a guy who said you don't bother to teach the women stick handling because they can't roll their wrists. But he did say, get off the bus with the best players in the world and you're probably going to win the game. And, I think there's a lot of truth to that. And we see teams here in Minnesota, players that want to play for the teams that are perennially more successful and have a chance of winning the state hockey tournament. And so they will leave their hometown teams just to go there. I know this is different than Canada, but for sure. But they don't always win just because a kid goes from one school to another. Winning seems to be the holy grail and the entire focus, whereas from my perspective, it's the end result of doing all the things right along the season. How do you build your team at the beginning of the season? You were talking about that, Coach, about early season focusing on the things that matter, and you're right 100%. If you don't do it early in the season, you're never going to get it done. And don't tolerate things. In our environment, we have wide skill ranges on our teams. And I would think, coaching junior hockey in Canada, the skill levels are pretty tight. First line, second line, third line. But down here, a lot of it is first line, second line. The third line is typically a very less in ability, and in a lot of programs they don't play very much. In my program they do, but maybe we give up some wins because of that. So anyways, I just love hearing you guys talk about it. Winning's fun. Winning championships is hard. And I've coached junior hockey, I've coached high school hockey, coached at USA Hockey stuff, and now I coach bantams 14 and under with peewee rules or squirt rules, but that's a USA Hockey thing.
I got a question for just about anybody, but uh, we all wear coaching hats during the series. Is there anything in the heat of the series as a coach you thought you might try that might help? Anybody have any thoughts during the series? And it's easy for us sitting in our armchairs watching the game. Uh, I'm curious about, Dave, Brad, Peter, whether you looked at the game and thought, gee, if they would have done this, if they'd have done that. It it seems to me that coaching today is getting your best players out there more often, and if you can shut them down, well, you're going to be successful. But is there anything anybody thought about and would have tried or might have experimented with? And hindsight's easy, but it's worth talking about. What about you, Dave?
Yeah. Well, Wally, when I watched the series, actually, I have to admit this, I picked the Oilers to win it. I wasn't really cheering for the Oilers, but I picked the Oilers to win it. I thought they would. When I watched them play against, on the way up Dallas and those other teams, I just thought, geez, they've got it in gear. But to me, I think one of the issues with Edmonton is their, without a doubt, their defensemen are, as a group, not as capable as Florida's are. Florida's defense, I think, plays a little smarter game, plays up a little bit tighter, doesn't back in as much, plays a one-on-one situation better. So, I really didn't think about anything that I would do differently. I just, it just kind of reinforced with me the importance of starting your season off, teaching what you want to teach, getting it in place, and then everything takes care of itself. And I think that the one thing when Tom talked about the 4 playing roles, when I watched this series, one thing I really noticed about Florida, I thought they see transition moments really quickly, whether it be offense to defense or defense to offense. And so they're moving, and sometimes they're not always right, but they're moving, like, from, especially, I thought, defense to offense. They see the puck might change hands, and boy, they start to move to offense very quickly. And they're moving as the turnover occurred. And so they see it a few seconds before it happens. And that seems to be the key in the series for me. One of the keys was on transition pucks. Florida was a couple of seconds ahead of the transition occurring in terms of seeing it, starting to move, generating some speed on the offense. The puck would come out, and all of a sudden, boom, they were gone with some terrific rush opportunities that led to offensive zone play sometimes, but they led to scoring chances. So, I guess to me, when I watched this series, I didn't see a lot of things other than it just appeared to me that in many situations it might be too late for the Oilers. They've allowed things to go too far, too long, and you can never get it. Your defensive game has to be solid. Like everybody, I know in my era, defense wins. That was always it, and now I know we can outscore bad goaltending sometimes, not all the time and not enough, but I still think you got to make sure that you've got the defensive side of your game in place. And once you've got that, boy, it helps, it feeds your offensive game. The better you check, the more you have the puck, the more chances you're going to have to score with a good offense. So, Wally, that's what I have to say.
Well, I had a really radical thought. I don't even know if I brought it up before, but I thought of it probably 3 games ago because the Oilers couldn't get the puck in the zone. They Draisaitl and McDavid always tried to enter it with speed and turned it over near the blue line. They could not penetrate on direct attack with control of the puck. So my radical suggestion, which I think they might, was dump the puck in, go get it. it wasn't working.
Yeah.
You have to do something differently. And I know when they interviewed McDavid after the final game, his interview about his frustration and how stifled they were. And then I read a short segment of his take. He said, we were trying to do things the same way and it didn't work. So I think there's times in the game you've got to do
Mhm.
something radical and hope you get a result. Not that you will, but at that level, and I'm never close to it, I think you've got to come up with some ideas that might help you get the puck in the zone, regain possession of it, and see what can happen. So,
Wally, Brad early in the conversation talked about when he was watching the Oilers that they got to a point where there was a lot of individual big time effort, but collectively they weren't playing well together. And I think I'm just wondering, you're not in the dressing room, so you don't know, but all the questions in every series about their goalkeeping. I wonder if, like that's the playoffs moves along, if you have stable goaltending, I think that's one of the ways that your team is very confident. Like I can go back to my days with Phoenix. We got to the conference final, the final 4 teams left in the NHL playoffs. We got there because of Mike Smith. Mike was superb against Chicago, played great, bailed us out on so many occasions, caused us to get our game up to a higher level. When we got our chances, we were very opportunistic and did. Nashville was a team just like us, built to play both sides of the puck and very similar style. We prevailed there. But I really wonder if the goaltending situations didn't erode the confidence of the Oilers team a little bit. And as Brad said, I think you get a lot of individual situations where guys are trying to get it done for everybody, but doing it themselves. I mean, their intentions are good. They're thinking about the team, but they're trying to do too much on a solo effort. And that made them easier to play against because there's no question in games 5 and 6, the Oilers tried to do a lot themselves. Their collective play offensively was very poor, and it made Florida's job just that much easier. So the mental part of the game, I think, is what I'm saying, really becomes a factor. And goaltending erodes some of those positive mental waves you'd like to have.
yeah, it comes down to the coach getting hired or fired, but I think it comes down to the goalie probably getting replaced
Yeah.
in the end. And I know those are the way you do things in the business of hockey. It's what happens.
Yeah.
I sort of simplify the results of teams with the most talent, and I refer to the Oilers because they have the top end players, and Toronto has the top end players. And how do you manage the bench so everybody else plays their game and contributes and feels a part of the team? And the idea of going to the well too often, and I think it's hard to coach when you've got superstars.
Mm-hmm.
And that I actually cheer for Edmonton, Toronto to win a cup. And I think they have to learn the best team wins, not the best players. And it has to do with the art of coaching and transmitting belief in everyone on your team. And that's what Paul Maurice and the Panthers have done. I'm not sure that the talent discrepancy is as great as we make it because Dave, in our era, we learned you can defend anybody one on one. I mean, biomechanically, theoretically, you shouldn't get beat one on one.
That's correct.
So, the idea of creating that identity and walking the talk and transmitting belief is something that's a challenge for all coaches. And when you win it all, it's really rewarding, as the Panthers have discovered. And Brand, You won it all. And transmitting belief, how soon did you believe that you could and would?
I think for my team, we had a belief throughout the entire season, and you talk about Dave talks about the mental preparation or grind, and I think it was the second year we were in the Centennial Cup, but obviously with us hosting, we knew we were going to play till May, and I think there was no fatigue in our players or wondering what's next, or we just knew we were playing till the end of May, and that was I think a good thing in our mental preparation. And people say, well, the season drags on, but we had a good feeling. I there's ups and downs in the season. I think early in our year we felt as coaches that the players were going through the motions. We got our free pass to the Centennial Cup, but as it goes on and you get into January, February, they start to turn it up, and that's not a thing. And go back to what Hal said about you got to be a close team to win. I just read the other day where Florida said every time they're on the road they always go out together. They're eating together. They're as a team, and there's for us a huge correlation in what we do for team building off the ice and how it translates to the rink. We're fortunate here that we have a good relationship with the Calgary TAC team, and the last 2 years we've gone out and done a full day TAC training, different exercises with the TAC team, and it 2 years ago changed our season, and then we went back, and it just correlates that some of the takeaways. Big one was like to trust each other, but really focus on what you're supposed to do, because you have to do your job, and your teammates need to trust you to do your job. And the thinking was like, if a TAC guy doesn't do his job, somebody dies. So when you think about it like that, and all you have to do is defend between this guy and the net, and you got support, it changes your approach a little bit, and the team building was big for us. But I knew we were going to be successful in the playoffs. In our last practice for our playoffs, we had our first fight in practice. Guys, you could just see that the competitors had risen, and the guys that are more playoff guys, and they talk about Florida being changed as a team a couple years ago to be more playoff team, and maybe give up 10 points in the regular season, because that's not what it's about. And you find that the guys that compete raise their game, and the depth and the weakest link. And with Florida and Edmonton, I'll say I watched game one, and I thought Edmonton was going to win the series because I didn't think Florida could match their speed. I thought they were too fast, but they found a way to change that narrative. And Edmonton, when you play with fire coming from behind so many times, and now you got to ride your top guys, I think there is that fatigue. And I probably shouldn't be talking about it because my team love to give up the first goal and get down as well. But you look at game four when they're down 3-0, and they got to come back. You can only do that so many times, and I think that's you talk about the goaltending, and I think even the lineup changes. Edmonton was searching for answers. Florida didn't make any lineup changes, and I do think I was fortunate. I got to go to game four, Edmonton versus Dallas, and I think Edmonton got up 2-1, and their checking was phenomenal. So I know they can do it. They smothered Dallas. They had those layers. They turned pucks over and counterattacked, but Florida never let them have the lead, so that Florida didn't have to open up and press those situations at all, and just controlled the game. So just I wonder too, going in, you think Edmonton's the run and gun high offensive team, but Florida had nine guys with 15 points, and maybe the narrative should have been flipped, like, hey, we need to check these guys and take our opportunities. And special teams that win the special teams most likely going to win. I think Florida was probably 30% power play, and Edmonton maybe 15, 16. So some takeaways there.
I'd like to kind of return to the zone entry thing. I just Bietska, he was showing. I'm pretty sure it was him. Showed how Florida, when they're having trouble getting the zone, they do a really hard rim and two forwards go to the weak side and pick up those pucks on the boards. So they can get into the zone. And one thing about Edmonton, I think their best playoff player is Hyman, and he was hurt, so that didn't help him either.
Definitely have to stay healthy to win. That's for sure.
You can't predict the outcome. You can't predict injuries, performance, and Peter, you've had your hand raised. Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, I've got a question to the group, and like kind of to your point about Connor McDavid's frustration with not changing things. So the question is for me is, so things are going south. Everything you've done up till this point that has worked in your regular season, your playoffs to get you to where you are, now isn't working. So now it's kind of push comes to shove time, and you want to change things as a coach, right? I'm guessing. And how receptive are the players at that level to making that change? Because you're trying to get them to buy into something that they have not essentially been doing for the most part consistently, right? So at that point of the series, with all the mental piece, with the pressures, and hey, let's just keep doing what we're doing. We're going to get there, right? We've all had that conversation with our teams, and the players have had that. So will they buy in, actually get a team to change what they've been doing at that point and have it make a difference?
Well, Peter, I've got one observation. I think in short-term competition like world championships, you can get everybody to buy in, park their egos, but in long-term competition and in the NHL playoffs, it's much more difficult. You just can't avoid the emotional highs and lows that seem to occur. I mean, it is a marathon, like Cal Botterill said. So the art of being able to come up with an idea and push the right button at the right time. My question is, did they ever ask the players, hey, what do you think? The key players. McDavid was frustrated. Well, what do you think we can do differently? They're shutting us down here. Because we think as coaches, and we got our video guys, and there's three of us coaches breaking it down, we can go in and tell them what to do. I actually believe that at that level, those players would have ideas if we approach them about it. I don't know if that's the norm today or even thought about today. Dave, can you comment on that, having coached in the NHL?
Well, in the situation, to be specific, the situation the Oilers are in, you certainly can't change very much because you've got there with doing some things that, to me, it's not so much, here's something we should try, in terms of a little variation or whatever. It's to go back to what was working successfully for them. They seem to abandon that. Like, to me, if your adjustments make sense, players buy in no matter what level you're at. So to me, the Oilers situation, I think they tried to possess the puck on the entry too much. Should have got it behind the defenseman more readily, because the Oilers have great speed too, and they can forecheck. And they didn't really establish much of a forechecking game. And I think, to me, I'm assuming that's maybe what McDavid is referring to, because you can't take the chalk and make a whole bunch of changes to your team. You're there. You're in the final. You're in game 6. Or, say you're back further. You're game 1 and 2. Just start playing smarter. Start doing what you did to get there. And the Oilers, I thought against Dallas, they got the puck behind the defense very well. when Dallas played soft on the rush, they possessed the puck and got good entries with possession. So their game was really, really smart. Again, I'm going back to the fact that I think players have more physical stamina than mental stamina. And I think because their goaltending was always in question, that affected their mental stamina. And your outlook on a game affects how you play. And I think mentally it looked to me like Florida was getting charged up mentally and Edmonton was decharging mentally. So I think, Wally, it's not a simplistic one thing. These things are all part of there's not one simple answer to what happened with the Oilers. You can make changes if you like, but you can't make many changes at that point in the season. It's simply, you've told the players all year how you win. This is how we win. And you show them that kind of stuff and go back to doing what you were doing in other series. And they just seemed to me that they tried to do too much on an individual basis. Their game got less and less collectively offensively. And then their defensive liability started to show because they were without the puck a lot more than they normally play, Wally. So it's not simple. There's not a simple answer. It's really, really, there's a lot of factors here. But anyway.
Guys, everybody here, we know everybody watches the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
And a lot of coaches do takeaways from the Stanley Cup. Some coaches mistakenly try to do the same thing at their minor hockey level that they see the Stanley Cup players and coaches doing. But what lessons can minor hockey coaches learn from something like this? I've got one general thing as the agony of, the joy of victory and the agony of defeat. That could be the most distracting thing when you play the game. And so I believe that in minor hockey and even at the pro level, Dave, the job of one coach and one team and the job of the other coach and other team is to make them better. And their job is to make you better. And right now, there's lots to be learned here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if there's anything that this might be a lesson to minor hockey coaches. Tom? Peter?
Hey, always talking to you.
Anybody got any idea?
Well, I think you have to go and just make sure that they're solid in all the 4 playing roles. And you can't just focus on defense and you can't just focus on offense. And if at the minor hockey level, your kind of job is to make them complete hockey players. That's my thought about it.
Peter? Brad, you've got a boy playing minor hockey,
Mm-hmm.
and you've watched a lot of minor hockey. What lessons can we take away from that they can take away from that? Coaches.
I think you have to empower the players a little bit, even at a minor hockey level. And like, I think the Florida had a much better leadership than Edmonton. Not the top end leadership, but throughout. And you watched my team play. We got beat, probably our worst game of the year, 7-2 in the round robin play, and we as coaches didn't have to say much. The players they were the next day that the leaders and the older players are sitting in a circle in the hallway figuring it out. And as you know, the next game was winning you get first, losing you go home. And that to put that on to have the players be able to take that even at a minor hockey level, to take it upon themselves to reiterate a coach's message or buy in regardless. I think at minor hockey, there's too many people that think they know that aren't involved. So you've got parents complaining, And then when a kid goes home, they're in the kid's ear. Well, now there's no respect for the coach or the system or the team play. It's, that those seeds are planted. And I think for minor hockey, it's too much focus on winning, in my opinion. And as you know, you should be working on making three passes, but um, let them work on making them good people and let them compete. And interesting, it comes down for me. It comes down to the willingness for the players to play for each other and do what it takes to win. And Florida did that. It's not as much X's and O's when you want it more, in my opinion. But you have to make those adjustments. And as you mentioned, it's a little off topic, but the players got to buy into the adjustments that are being made, and they got to have some purpose and not just to say we're trying different things. And it's amazing when you can make an adjustment or drop a play and it works, that the reaction you get from an entire team as a coach, and that belief and buy-in just increases. So,
Well, Brad, I'm gonna, Dave, I don't know if you recall, but I remember when you came back from the first Izvestia and I came to practice and you told me the story of the players' response after the first period. I don't know if you'll recall the story. If you don't, I'll tell it. But they got a lesson in the reality of good hockey. And like in the dressing room, they delivered the message to one another. So can you relate to that experience and maybe talk about the Izvestia? Nobody knows about it, but it's the Russian Stanley Cup.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very interesting tournament because for all of us, myself included, it was our first Izvestia Cup. And you've got the five national teams. Well, yeah, the five national teams, four from Europe and Canada. So in those days, too, it was uninterrupted, most of those teams, by the NHL. They had their top people. There's a few defectors from the Czech, maybe a Russian one or two, but not very many had defected to the NHL. But so the level was very high. And it was really interesting because when I listened to the players talking in the dressing room, I was kind of outside listening to them talk. They were saying all the right things. I mean, they knew what we had to do. They knew that's why we work so much on little techniques of defending and those kind of things. It suddenly what the coaching staff was trying to do, I think, made sense to the players because they finally saw the tip of the iceberg. They saw the top guys and saw why we had to do things a certain way. So from that point on, during that season, the Izvestia Cup gave us insights into really to the players as to what they had to do individually in terms of their commitment to playing the game in both directions. So, it was very valuable. And I think that's one thing I learned from working with the national team was that sometimes I just lurk outside the dressing room door between periods and I could hear the guys talking. And you know what, for years and years with the Europeans, it was simply dial up the physical aspect of the game and we'll win, and our guys realized that ain't going to work. We have to be physical, but we've got to be technically smart. And so it was a great learning experience, and it made it really easy for our coaching staff from that point on because the guys just figured out this is what we have to do if we're going to be competitive with these teams. And so, I think you mentioned, Brad mentioned it. I think we all agree. You've got to listen to your players sometimes, ask them. And so sometimes I don't think I ever really asked the guys very much. I should ask them more what we should do, but I listened to what they were saying and I heard them conversations. And it was very valuable for me as a coach to realize my players know a lot. They're smart. They know what they have to do. I just got to find a way to develop those ideas in practice. And one of the most important things about coaching is reinforcement. If you reward guys, this is Wayne Hallowell, when I was coaching in Montreal, mentioned, see it, appreciate it, acknowledge it. And so in the game today, that's what I saw a lot from Florida. Geez, I mean, Bobrovsky gets out of the net, a defenseman blocks a passing lane. He's tapping the guy when the play stops on the shin pads. So they really did a really good job of this whole team. I can see it all year. They build chemistry because they see it, they appreciate, they acknowledge it, and guys do it again. They repeat it. And all of a sudden, you got guys doing some pretty amazing things on a regular basis. And that's kind of why they won. So, that's a fascinating part about coaching. There's so much to it. It's not easy. People tend to look for one singular thing to analyze a problem. It's not. It's very complex. There's a lot of things going on. But I think the Oilers will learn from this. And I think that they'll rectify a few things in their roster. And I think if they get that one position figured out, I think they can be knocking on the door again next year. But, you got to build it. You got to build that chemistry throughout the season. And you really have to make sure your support guys. I mean, the top guys get lots of credit, lots of, they get more money too. So, it's pretty good. But they've got to make sure that everybody feels appreciated. Everybody sees their role. Their game serves the team. And that's an evolution. And Florida, I think, does that all year. And because they were the Cup champions from the previous year, they can draw upon that resource. And they did. You could see they put it together. After game 4, there must have been a team meeting where they said, okay, this is what we're going to do. Nothing different. Just going to do it better, longer, harder. Because if they had kept forechecking in game 4, the series would be over there in terms of the whole thing going backwards for the Oilers.